When my cousin Vanessa announced her wedding, I didn't think twice. I wanted to share it with Mikey, my 7-year-old son. Mikey has semi-low functioning autism, and most events were invited to explicitly ask that he not attend. But this time I thought family would be different. I sat Mikey down and gently told him about the wedding. His entire face lit up. "Really, Daddy? Really? I can go?" I barely got out a yes before he launched himself into my arms. We twirled around the living room, his laughter echoing through the house. Moments like this mean everything to him. One of his symptoms is heightened emotional response to joy, clapping, bouncing, even squealing. He couldn't stop smiling. To prepare him, I started explaining what weddings are like. I told him it was a big day for Vanessa, so he should try to be quiet and respectful. Mikey nodded seriously. I felt proud and hopeful. Maybe this time, things would be okay. Maybe, for once, Mikey would be welcomed like any other kid. As he bounced away to pick out a dress shirt, I believed this moment marked a step forward for both of us. The morning of the wedding rehearsal, I sat Mikey down at the kitchen table to review our wedding rules. He swung his legs excitedly, already dressed in his button-up shirt and khakis. I went over them slowly. No talking during the ceremony, no sudden loud noises, and remember, it's Vanessa's special day. Mikey nodded with his whole body, eyes wide and serious. "I'll be quiet, Daddy, like a ninja," he whispered dramatically. I smiled. That was his way of saying he'd try his best. We even practiced sitting still on the couch for 5 minutes straight. He fidgeted a bit, but he made it. For Mikey, that was huge progress. I packed a small sensory bag, noise-canceling headphones, fidget toys, a chewy necklace, just in case things got overwhelming. As we got in the car, he gripped his little toy dinosaur tightly, a comfort item he rarely left home without. In the rearview mirror, I saw him mouthing, "Quiet like a ninja," to himself. I couldn't help but feel proud. He was trying so hard. I just hoped the people at the rehearsal would see that too. We arrived at the church for the wedding rehearsal just a few minutes early. Mikey held my hand tightly, his small fingers wrapped around mine as we walked inside. The room was full of people, bridesmaids, groomsmen, and family, all chatting and laughing. Mikey stayed close to me, his eyes scanning everything curiously. When the practice ceremony began, he was silent, just as we rehearsed. Halfway through, I noticed him smiling hard, his "I'm really happy" smile. I gently squeezed his hand, a quiet signal that I was happy too. But before we could enjoy the moment, Vanessa appeared at the top of the aisle. She froze, then shouted, "Excuse me, what is he doing here?" The room fell silent. I froze. Mikey kept smiling, not realizing she meant him. Vanessa turned to her fiancé, practically screeching, "I thought you told him not to come." Her finger pointed straight at my son. Mikey's face slowly crumbled into confusion. A few people looked uncomfortable, but most just nodded along with her outburst. I felt rage boiling inside, but I held it in. I looked at Mikey's wide, hurt eyes, and we walked out without saying a word. Outside the church, Mikey's confusion turned into distress. His face crumpled, and he clung to my hand with growing anxiety. "Why was she yelling at you, Daddy? That was so mean," he said, eyes searching mine. My throat tightened. He didn't know the truth, that the yelling wasn't at me, but at him. "Some people are mean because they don't feel good about themselves," I said, choosing my words carefully. Mikey nodded slowly, trying to process. Then came the meltdown. He dropped to the ground, covering his ears, rocking, repeating, "That was mean, that was mean." I crouched beside him, whispering calming words, and gave him his squishy toy. After some time, his breathing slowed. He leaned into me, exhausted. We sat on the curb together, the sky dimming above us. I wanted to scream, to demand the world be fair to him, but instead I held him and stayed silent. He had done nothing wrong, and yet he had been shamed. As I carried him back to the car, I whispered a silent promise. I would protect him. No matter what. Vanessa may have started something that day, but I would be the one to finish it. 2 days later, the real wedding took place. Mikey believed the rehearsal had been the actual event, and I didn't correct him. I hired a kind babysitter and told Mikey we were having a quiet day at home while I went to a boring adult thing. He didn't ask further. At the wedding reception, I kept to myself at first. I didn't want to cause a scene. Vanessa was glowing in her dress, surrounded by family and friends. I watched from a distance, silently daring her to acknowledge what she had done. She never did. During dinner, I tapped my glass and stood. The room hushed. Vanessa looked at me with a tight smile, mouthing, "Thanks for not bringing him." I nodded. Then I reached into my pocket, pulled out my phone, and hit play. Mikey's voice filled the room, his little recorded message wishing Vanessa and her husband happiness, filled with childlike joy and sincerity. The room was dead silent. My voice cracked as I said, "He wanted to say congratulations himself." Some people wiped their eyes. Vanessa's smile had vanished. I toasted with the family. For a moment I had the last word, or so I thought. The next morning, less than 24 hours after the wedding, there was a knock on my door. I opened it to find two strangers, Child Protective Services. The lead worker held a clipboard and barely introduced herself before walking inside. My head spun. "We received a report of unsafe living conditions for your son," she said flatly. They began inspecting every inch of my home. Mikey's mattress was on the floor to reduce sensory overload. She noted it down. The plastic covers on the furniture to manage accidents? Noted. Child-proof locks on cabinets to prevent him from accessing sharp tools? Also noted. I tried to explain that Mikey has autism, that these were accommodations, not neglect. But she muttered under her breath, "That's what they all say," and made a call. Minutes later, she announced an emergency removal order. I was stunned. "He'll be placed with his nearest relative," she added. I quickly suggested my mom, Mikey's grandma. My voice was shaking as I packed Mikey's things. His toothbrush, his comfort toy, his medication log. I wanted to scream, cry, beg. But all I could do was watch as they left with my son, because someone had lied. The next 72 hours were the longest of my life. I barely ate, barely slept. The house was too quiet without Mikey's voice echoing through the rooms. I sat in his bedroom, surrounded by his toys, trying to breathe through the panic. I called my mom first. She hadn't received Mikey yet, despite me listing her as his emergency guardian. That was my first red flag. Next, I called a lawyer, someone recommended in a support group for parents of autistic children. Elizabeth Reyes. She picked up on the first ring and listened intently. "We need to gather all documentation proving his diagnosis and your parenting efforts," she said. I was already opening drawers. Therapy notes, doctor visits, progress reports, anything I could find. Then I called Mikey's developmental pediatrician, Dr. Chen. When I explained what happened, her voice rose in outrage. "Those are medically necessary accommodations, not signs of neglect," she snapped. "I'll write a letter and testify if needed." Her support gave me strength. I wasn't alone. Someone had tried to paint me as unfit, but I was going to prove them wrong. I wasn't just fighting to get Mikey back, I was fighting for the truth. By the next morning, I had assembled a growing pile of documentation. Medical records, school reports, therapy assessments. I called Morgan, my neighbor and a special education teacher who had known Mikey for years. "This is ridiculous," she said. "I've seen you with him. You're the most dedicated father I know." She immediately agreed to write a character reference. By noon, I was on my way to meet Elizabeth, the lawyer. Her office was small but packed with children's drawings. She listened carefully as I explained everything, from the wedding rehearsal to the CPS removal. "Do you believe your cousin made the report out of revenge?" she asked. I nodded. "The timing is too perfect." Elizabeth wasn't surprised. "Unfortunately, false CPS reports happen more than you'd think, but we can fight this." She began planning for the upcoming hearing, which would take place within 72 hours of Mikey's removal. We needed letters, records, witnesses, anything that could show my devotion to Mikey. Before I left, she promised to file an emergency motion for visitation. "You deserve to see your son," she said. For the first time in days, I felt like someone was in my corner, and that we had a chance. After leaving Elizabeth's office, I went straight to Mikey's school. The principal, Mrs. Taylor, was stunned when I told her what had happened. "That doesn't make sense," she said. "We've never had any concerns about Mikey's care." She immediately pulled up his file and began gathering documents, IEPs, progress notes, parent-teacher communication logs. "I'll write a letter tonight," she promised. "You've been at every school event. Anyone watching you too can see how much you love him." On the drive home, my phone buzzed again. It was my mom. Her voice was sharp with anger. "I just spoke with your Aunt Linda. Vanessa told her that Mikey had a meltdown at the rehearsal and that you did nothing." My hands clenched the steering wheel. "That's a lie," I muttered. "He was quiet until Vanessa started screaming." "I know," Mom said. "But Vanessa's telling everyone you're neglectful, that Mikey is dangerous and uncontrollable." My stomach turned. Now I understood. Vanessa hadn't just tried to exclude Mikey, she was painting me as unfit. She wanted him taken away for good, and I was done staying silent. That night, after finishing the documentation, I sat in Mikey's room, missing him more than words could say. Then my phone buzzed with a new message from a name I didn't expect. Thomas, Vanessa's new husband. The message was short. I had nothing to do with this, I'm sorry. I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. Could he be sincere? Was this a trap? I took a screenshot just in case. Moments later, my phone rang. Unknown number. I hesitated, then picked up. Mr. Williams, this is Jordan from Child Protective Services. I'm Mikey's assigned case worker. My breath caught. Where's my son? Is he okay? I asked. He's with a foster family that has experience with autistic children, he replied. His voice was calm, more compassionate than the last worker. I know you requested his grandmother. We're evaluating that placement now, but you've been approved for a supervised visit tomorrow at 2 p.m. at our office. I closed my eyes and exhaled for the first time in days. Thank you, I whispered. As soon as the call ended, I phoned Elizabeth. She warned me. They'll be watching everything. Be calm, be natural, and don't mention Vanessa. The following day, I arrived at the CPS office an hour early. I brought Mikey's favorite blue plush octopus, his comfort item since he was 4. The waiting room was cold and sterile, filled with uncomfortable chairs and faded posters about safety and family. Every second dragged. When they finally brought Mikey in, I stood up so fast the chair nearly tipped. He looked tired with dark circles under his eyes, but the moment he saw me, he lit up. "Daddy," he yelled, running into my arms. I held him tight, trying not to cry. He began talking rapidly about the lady who cut his sandwiches wrong, about the toys that weren't soft, about how much he missed home. For a short time, everything felt normal again. But when the hour was up, a staff member stepped in. Mikey clung to me, screaming, "I want to go home, I want my daddy." My heart shattered. I tried to calm him, deep breaths, sensory cues, but nothing worked. As they pried him away, I kept telling him, "It's okay, buddy, I'm coming for you, I promise." I barely made it to my car before the sobs overtook me. Back at home, I collapsed onto the couch, emotionally drained. The house was still haunted by Mikey's absence. Then my email pinged. It was Dr. Chen. Attached was her letter, a detailed statement outlining Mikey's diagnosis and justifying every accommodation in our home. She described why the mattress was on the floor, why we used plastic covers, the purpose of the safety locks. She ended the letter by saying, "In my professional opinion, Mr. Williams has demonstrated exceptional care and commitment to his son's well-being." I forwarded it to Elizabeth immediately. Seconds later, my phone rang. It was Mom. "They're doing a home inspection tomorrow to see if Mikey can stay with me temporarily." My heart lifted. "That's something," I said. "At least he'll be with family." But her voice lowered. "They also mentioned receiving additional concerns about your care." My stomach dropped. "From who?" I asked. "They wouldn't say, but I have a feeling." Vanessa was doubling down. Even after all of this, she was still trying to destroy me. But now I had evidence, allies, and a fire inside me I hadn't felt before. I was going to end this war on my terms. I couldn't sleep that night. I kept pacing the house, checking Mikey's room, sitting on his bed just to feel closer to him. Around midnight, I gave up and lay on the floor with his weighted blanket, the scent of his shampoo still faint on the pillow. I must have drifted off because I was woken up by my phone buzzing. A new text from an unknown number. "Check your email, you need to see this." My heart pounded as I opened the message. It had no subject, just a video attachment. I clicked play. It was footage from Vanessa's wedding, taken from another table. It showed me giving my speech and playing Mikey's recording. Then the camera caught Vanessa leaning over to several guests, whispering heatedly. She showed one guest something on her phone. The timestamp, 9:47 p.m. The CPS report was logged at 9:52 p.m. I stared at the screen in disbelief. Proof. Actual proof that Vanessa had filed the report out of spite. I forwarded it to Elizabeth instantly. Her reply came fast. "This is big. Who sent it?" I didn't know yet, but someone wanted the truth out, and I was going to use it. I stared at the video again and again, trying to memorize every detail. Then my phone buzzed, a new message from the same unknown number. It read, "Thomas, I'm sorry about all of this. I tried to stop her." My heart raced. Vanessa's husband. I replied cautiously, asking why he was helping me. His response came after a long pause. "Because what she's doing is wrong. She even convinced her bridesmaid to lie to CPS." I immediately called Elizabeth and read her every word. She was thrilled. "If he's willing to testify, this could change everything," she said, but Thomas wasn't ready to go public. "I'll think about it," he texted. "But she can't know it was me." I understood. Vanessa was volatile. We agreed to keep his involvement secret for now. Still, the pieces were falling into place. She wasn't just lying, she was orchestrating a smear campaign. And now we had someone on the inside. As I sat in the dark, I felt a shift. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I was strategizing. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I believed we might actually win. The day of the home visit arrived. Dr. Ramirez, the specialist CPS had assigned, showed up right on time. She was nothing like the first caseworker. Older, calm, and with the kind of presence that put both me and Mikey at ease. Mikey had been allowed to join for the visit, and when she entered, she knelt down to his level and greeted him directly. "Hi, Mikey. Can you show me your room?" He led her proudly, pointing out his sensory corner, visual schedule board, and plush toy collection. She took notes quietly, asking thoughtful questions. She never once made me feel judged. She watched how I interacted with Mikey, how I redirected him when he got overstimulated, and how he responded to my cues. She seemed genuinely impressed. "You've built a very supportive environment," she told me near the end. I nodded, overwhelmed with emotion. As she left, she promised her report would be thorough and fair. I thanked her, barely holding back tears. For the first time, someone from CPS saw us, really saw us, and it made me believe we were finally being heard. That evening, I received another message from Thomas. It was short but urgent. "Vanessa knows someone sent you the video. She's furious. Be careful." Before I could respond, my phone rang. It was Jordan from CPS. My heart sank. "Mr. Williams, we've received another report regarding Mikey," he said. I closed my eyes, dreading what would come next. "This one alleges that you're unnecessarily medicating him to control his behavior." I almost laughed from disbelief. "That's completely false," I said. "All his medications are prescribed by Dr. Chen." Jordan's voice was calm. "I understand, and for now, given Dr. Ramirez's recent report and the judge's ruling, we're not taking any action. But I wanted you to know." I thanked him for the heads up. After hanging up, I called Elizabeth. She wasn't surprised. "This is actually good for us," she said. "Multiple false reports strengthen our harassment case." She recommended we start documenting everything more formally. "If this continues, we'll file for a restraining order and possibly civil action." I looked around my quiet house, then to Mikey's empty room. Vanessa wasn't giving up, but neither was I, and I finally had the law starting to lean my way. The next day, Dr. Ramirez's report arrived in my inbox. My hands shook as I opened it. Page after page detailed Mikey's needs, my accommodations, and her observations. She called the environment safe, structured, and nurturing. Every strategy I'd put in place was described as appropriate and effective. She confirmed that all medications were medically necessary and administered responsibly. At the end, she wrote, "There is no evidence of neglect or abuse. In my opinion, Mr. Williams is providing excellent care tailored to his son's developmental needs." I forwarded it to Elizabeth immediately. Less than an hour later, Jordan from CPS called. "We're closing the case," he said. I was speechless. "Based on Dr. Ramirez's report, there's no cause for concern. Mikey can return home." I nearly dropped the phone. Jordan's tone softened. "Off the record, I want to say I'm sorry. This should have never gone this far." I thanked him with a cracked voice. The moment I hung up, I grabbed my keys. My son was coming home. I had imagined this moment 100 times, but nothing compared to the real thing. This nightmare was finally breaking. I could breathe again. I drove straight to my mom's house, heart pounding the entire way. Mikey was waiting at the window, his small hands pressed against the glass. The moment I stepped out of the car, he burst through the front door and ran toward me. "Daddy," he cried. I dropped to my knees just in time to catch him in my arms. He clung to me like he was afraid I'd disappear again. "Are you staying now, forever?" he asked. "Forever, buddy," I whispered, holding back tears. Inside, Mom had already packed up his things. His books, his schedule board, his favorite snacks, all ready to go. She gave me a long hug. "I knew they'd see the truth," she said softly. On the way home, Mikey chattered nonstop. He held my hand the entire ride and asked if we could get rainbow sprinkle ice cream. "Extra sprinkles," I told him. Back at home, he ran to his room and hugged his dinosaur plush. I stood at the door and watched him, overwhelmed with gratitude. We were finally together again. The war wasn't over, but at least my son was home. That night, Mikey was more settled than I had seen him in weeks. We built a fort out of blankets in the living room and read his favorite dinosaur book twice. He curled up beside me, clutching Squish, the blue octopus plush he'd carried since preschool. Around midnight, I woke to find him standing next to my bed, eyes wide and wet with tears. "What's wrong, buddy?" I asked, sitting up quickly. I had a bad dream, he whispered. The mean lady took me away again. My heart cracked. I pulled him into my arms and held him tight. She's never taking you again, I promised. You're safe now. I carried him back to his bed, but he wouldn't let go, so I lay down beside him, arm wrapped around his little shoulders until his breathing slowed. In the faint nightlight glow, I watched his face finally relax into sleep. Even in peace, the trauma lingered, but he was home, and I would spend every day proving to him that he would never be taken again, not while I was breathing. The next morning, while Mikey happily sorted his toy dinosaurs by size, I received a call from Jordan at CPS. Mr. Williams, the specialist's visit went better than expected. We've updated your case status accordingly, he said. I thanked him and was about to hang up when he added, but there's something else. We received another report yesterday. My stomach dropped. From who? I asked. He sighed. A man named Charles Johnson. He says he's your uncle. I was stunned. The only Charles in my extended family was Vanessa's father. He's not my uncle, I muttered. Jordan continued. The claims are nearly identical to previous reports. We're flagging it as potentially malicious. I sat in silence for a moment. Vanessa was now using her father to continue the attacks. Thank you for letting me know, I said. After the call, I rang Elizabeth and told her everything. She sounded almost relieved. This is the pattern we needed. We'll move forward with the restraining order, and we'll expand it to include all relevant family members. It wasn't over yet, but for the first time I could see how it might be soon. That afternoon, Elizabeth filed the expanded restraining order. It now included Vanessa's father and any family member acting on her behalf. I drove to the courthouse alone, nerves buzzing under my skin. At the front desk, the clerk, a kind woman in her 50s with silver-rimmed glasses, reviewed the paperwork. You've got everything in order, she said. We'll notify the involved parties today. On the way out, I sat on a bench beneath a large courthouse window, the weight of it all pressing down. This wasn't just about legal protection anymore. It was about drawing a final boundary, one that couldn't be crossed without consequence. I looked through the glass at the city beyond. Cars passed, people walked dogs, life moved on. But for me, this was a pivotal moment. I sent a message to Elizabeth. Thank you for everything. She replied almost instantly. You're doing everything right. Keep going. I took a deep breath. It was exhausting, but I wasn't backing down. For Mikey's sake, I couldn't. A few days later, I received a letter from Vanessa's father. It was handwritten in tight cursive on a yellow legal pad. He claimed I had turned the family against them, and that Vanessa was just trying to help your boy in her own way. He ended the letter with a warning. You've made enemies you'll regret. My hands trembled as I read it. I locked the letter in my desk drawer and called Elizabeth. She advised me to report the communication immediately as a violation of the restraining order. That night I watched Mikey sleep, his tiny chest rising and falling in peaceful rhythm. I whispered a silent promise to protect him no matter the cost. Outside, the wind howled against the windows. I felt fear, yes, but also clarity. Vanessa's father had crossed a line. This wasn't family conflict anymore. It was harassment. I wouldn't let threats shake me. I wrote a formal statement for the police and prepared myself for whatever came next. My son deserved peace. The following week, Mikey's school counselor called. She said Mikey had been quieter than usual, drawing a lot during free time. When she asked about his art, he told her, I draw happy places where people don't yell at me. My heart broke hearing that. I scheduled a meeting with the counselor and his teacher. We talked about Mikey's needs, his comfort zones, and ways to reinforce safety and routine. I appreciated their support, but it stung to see how deeply Vanessa's actions had affected him. That night, Mikey showed me one of his drawings, a treehouse in the sky with stars and clouds and no people in it. It's quiet up there, he said softly. I hugged him tightly, trying to hide my tears. I realized I couldn't erase what had happened, but I could give him tools to heal. I bought art supplies, journals, and signed him up for a local therapy group for kids with special needs. It wasn't just about defending him anymore. It was about helping him rebuild his world on his terms. Weeks passed, and Mikey began to open up more during his group therapy sessions. One afternoon, his therapist called me with a small but powerful update. Mikey had shared a story during group time about a boy who built a magic shield that protected him from loud voices and mean faces. The therapist said it was the first time Mikey had talked so much in a group. I was overwhelmed with pride and relief. That night, Mikey came to me holding his stuffed dinosaur. He said, Dino helps me stay brave. I nodded, holding back tears. We made a bedtime story together about Dino and the boy with the shield, facing scary monsters but always staying safe. These small steps felt monumental. For Mikey, healing wasn't about forgetting. It was about rewriting the scary parts into something he could control. I started keeping a journal of our bedtime stories, hoping one day he'd read them and remember how strong he truly was. I was sitting in the living room when I received a call from Mikey's school counselor. She wanted to share something heartwarming. Mikey had made a friend. A boy named Lucas had asked to sit with him during lunch, and Mikey had said yes. They ate together, exchanged dinosaur facts, and even played quietly during recess. I nearly cried on the phone. For a child like Mikey, that simple moment held immense meaning. That evening he came home holding a crumpled piece of paper. It was a drawing of two dinosaurs with their names, Mycosaur and Lucasaurus, scribbled underneath. I taped it to the fridge like it was a masterpiece. Mikey beamed with pride, and for the first time in a long time he looked me in the eye and said, "Lucas is nice." It was just one friend, one day, but it was enough to remind me how far he'd come and how far he still could go. After school, Mikey wanted to stop by the park. It was the same one we had avoided for months because he used to have meltdowns there. But this time, he tugged my hand eagerly. We found an empty swing set, and he sat down without hesitation. As I gently pushed him, he laughed, a pure, uninhibited sound that filled the cool autumn air. Nearby, Lucas joined us, bringing two toy dinosaurs. They didn't talk much, but they didn't need to. Mikey held out his hand, and Lucas placed a small plastic stegosaurus in it. They began playing together in the sandbox, building a tiny dino world. I sat on the bench, watching them, heart full. The other parents smiled at us, a silent acknowledgement. This wasn't just a visit to the park. It was healing. It was progress. It was the kind of ordinary moment I used to envy in others, and now I was living it. The school sent home a flyer about an upcoming family celebration day. My stomach tightened just reading it. I remembered the last event, how Mikey had ended up hiding under the bleachers, overwhelmed. But when I asked him if he wanted to go, he looked at me and nodded, a small but confident gesture. We spent the week preparing. He practiced songs with noise-canceling headphones, and we talked about the crowds, the lights, and how it was okay to take breaks. The day came, and Mikey held my hand tightly as we walked in. It was noisy, chaotic, but he stayed close. When it was his class's turn to perform, he climbed on stage, eyes wide. He didn't sing much, but he stood there, calm, focused, and proud. The other kids didn't mind. The parents clapped, and I wiped away tears. It wasn't about being perfect, it was about being brave. That moment was his. A week after the family day event, my cousin unexpectedly showed up at my house. She brought over a gift for Mikey, a toy robot, and acted like everything was fine. I invited her in, mostly out of politeness, but I remained guarded. She sat on the couch, watching Mikey play, and said, "It was nice to see him up there. Maybe he's not as helpless as I thought." I clenched my jaw, trying to stay calm. She seemed to believe that one good moment erased everything she had done. I told her that Mikey had always been capable, she just hadn't looked close enough. She brushed it off, laughing awkwardly. I realized then that she wasn't here to apologize. She wanted to feel better about herself, not make things right. I walked her to the door and told her we were done. No more family events, no more pretending. She left without saying a word, and I felt lighter. After the final confrontation with my cousin, I decided to write everything down. Not just for myself, but for Mikey. One day, I want him to know the truth, not the sugar-coated version that some relatives might tell. I wrote about the playground incident, the birthday party humiliation, the long years of subtle exclusion. I documented how we rose above it, how Mikey shone despite everything. Writing it all helped me process the pain, but more importantly, it created a record, proof that he was always enough and that we fought for him. I kept the pages in a folder, labeled "For Mikey." Maybe he'll read it when he's older, maybe not. But I need him to know his story matters. His voice matters. Our family might be smaller now, but it's stronger, built on truth, built on love, and I'll make sure he never doubts that again. One evening, Mikey and I sat on the porch watching the sun set. He leaned his head on my shoulder, his small fingers playing with the hem of my shirt. We didn't speak much. We didn't need to. The silence between us was filled with peace. He looked up at me and said, "Dad, I like our life." I smiled, heart full. Despite everything, the betrayal, the chaos, the heartbreak, we had built something beautiful, safe, ours. I hugged him close, whispering, "Me too, buddy. Me too." In that quiet moment, I realized we didn't need a big family gathering or approval from people who didn't see his worth. All we needed was this: love, honesty, and each other. The pain of the past didn't vanish, but it no longer defined us. Mikey's future is bright, and I'll be there every step of the way. That's a promise no one can take away.